All right. Well, good morning, everyone. Good morning. This morning, I am giving part two of a series of talks on the energy body. And our daily experience of life has everything to do with our energy, right? With how much energy we have and with the quality of our energy. In the ancient systems of yoga, of Chinese medicine, Ayurveda, Tibetan Buddhism, Taoism, they all have in common the understanding that the human being is more than just a physical body, that it is also a subtle energy body. And that includes our mind and our thinking and our emotions. And the very center of our energy body is the spine, right? The spine enables energy to flow up and throughout the body. If you practice yoga, you know it's all about opening the spine, right? It's all about allowing the energy to flow unimpeded. Part of our energetic health is about releasing blocked energy, and becoming aware, becoming mindful of how blocks form and learning to use mindfulness to keep blockages from forming. In my last talk 2 weeks ago, I focused on the first two energy centers, the root center, the base chakra at the base of the spine, and then the second energy center, the emotional center. So today, I want to begin with focusing on the third energy center, which in Sanskrit is called the Manipura chakra. Manipura chakra. It's located at the solar plexus, which is just above the belly. Now, this energy center is described as the center for will, for power, and for personal responsibility. And it is associated with the color yellow. Consider the term willpower. Willpower. It's a power. It's a power of our will. It's a power that is directed by our will, as we all have free will. And it's defined as the ability to control one's actions, emotions, and urges. Okay. So think about all the occasions in which we use our willpower. We use it, for instance, to not be in reaction, but to wait to respond until we can respond consciously. That's a really important way we use our will. We use our willpower to stop eating, even though the Haagen-Dazs is tasting really good, or sometimes we don't use our will. We use our will to drive within the speed limit, right? So we don't get a ticket, and so we follow the law. We use our will to express healthy boundaries. We use it all the time, okay? And so this is the energy of our power center, of our solar plexus, the Manipura power center. When this center of will and power is open and in balance, we're in a state of goodwill, and our will is aligned with the well-being of all. When there is imbalance in our power center, it might express as low self-esteem or control issues or manipulative tendencies and misuse of power. So when we think of examples of profound goodwill, we think of the leaders we love, right? The great leaders, the Dalai Lama or Mother Teresa or Amma or Martin Luther King Jr. And what they all have in common is they used their power, their will to serve the greater good, to serve love, to serve justice. I think I said in my last talk, I quoted Jimi Hendrix. He said, when the power of love overcomes the love of power, the world will know peace. When the power of love overcomes the love of power. Michael Singer, who I quote often because he was my first spiritual teacher, he used to say that this world is mostly a third chakra planet, and that most of humanity is exploring consciousness in the first three chakras, the base chakra of survival, the second chakra of emotions and sexuality, and the third chakra of power and will. and that the big leap for humanity, the big leap in human evolution happens when we are able to move from the energy of those first three chakras up into the fourth chakra, into the heart center, and stabilize in living here, and stabilize in living in love in this heart center. When the power center is not connected to the heart, it can express in more limited ways. For instance, in the need to control, in the need to manipulate others. It can express in a desire to dominate. You know, if you look at authoritarianism in the world, you know, you often see this lust for power. There are so many great stories. I mean, gosh, I'd say most of our dramas are really about this exploration of power, and the struggle between the thirst for power and the greater power of love. It's a story as old as time. Excuse me. If you saw The Lord of the Rings, you might remember Frodo. You know, he was that sweet, humble, little, pure hearted hobbit, and he was asked to complete this kind of Herculean task. He was to take the ring of power, that ring that would corrupt whoever held it unless they had the most pure heart. And he had to take that ring into the forsaken land of Mordor and throw it into the crack of doom, into the volcanic fires where it had been created, right? The reason being is that that ring held so much power, and if it got into the wrong hands, it would destroy the world, right? It was already starting to. So Frodo, you know, being this humble, sweet being, he didn't think he had it in him, you know, to complete this monumental task. He was afraid and he felt incapable, and, you know, but he felt, you know, he loved the world so much, and especially he loved his home, the Shire, that he accepted this task of basically saving the world and banishing the shadow, which symbolized the growing evil, the growing darkness in the world. So as Frodo's journey began, he discovered that even he, the most pure-hearted of them all, was tempted by the immense power of the ring. When he put it on, he became invisible, and he felt its force, and it was harder and harder to resist the seduction of so much power. And it was such a trial for him that at times it just seemed insurmountable. But Frodo had a traveling mate. He had his dear friend Sam, another hobbit who was the most loyal friend anyone could ever have. And at one point, when Frodo was just overcome with doubt, Sam said, "A new day will come. A new day will come. And when it does, the sun will shine out all the clearer." And Sam just kept reminding Frodo in his moments of doubt of the light within him, of the goodness within him. And there was another moment in their journey when Frodo's faith was waning. And he said, "I wish none of this had happened. I just wish none of this had happened." And at that moment, another dear friend of Frodo's, the wizard, Gandalf, said, "So do all who live to see such times, but that is not for them to decide. All they have to decide is what to do with the time that is given to them." So Gandalf in that moment, he was like the inner voice of spirit that was saying, "This is what is. This is what is. I know it's really, really hard, but this is what is. How will we meet it? How will we use our power? How will we use our gifts and this precious life that we've been given? Will we find a way to empower the good in one another?" So Frodo and Sam journeyed on. They toiled and they journeyed on. And through that arduous journey, they grew in ways they could have never imagined. They had no idea of the courage and the bravery that lived in their hearts, you know, and through all their trials, they discovered themselves. And they came to find out that their determination to hold on to goodness in their own heart was their greatest power. And you could say, in a way, that part of the moral of the story was that love is the greatest power. And our innate goodness is the greatest power. The greatest power. The Taoist teacher, Montauk Chia, he says part of having healthy power is having humility and not being afraid to make mistakes and having what the Buddhists call beginner's mind, being teachable, basically, always being willing to learn and interested in learning. And part of healthy personal power includes believing in ourselves, believing in our goodness, believing in our divinity, our innate divinity, and our true innate nature as love itself. Montauk Chia also describes 4 things that tend to limit personal power. And those 4 things are: number 1, feeling not good enough about ourselves. Number 2, being unable to say no, because it might mean confrontation or entering into a debate. Number 3, choosing to blame everyone else for our problems and being caught up in victim consciousness, which Unity talks a lot about, moving from victim to victor consciousness. And then number 4, not having healthy boundaries. All 4 of those things are so worthy of a whole Sunday talk. And I want to especially talk about having healthy boundaries in the near future. But another teaching that facilitates healthy power is practicing non-resistance. That's what Gandalf was saying to Frodo. He was saying, this is what is here. Okay, this is what life has brought. If instead of fighting what is, we just meet it, we just welcome it as consciously as possible, it saves enormous energy. It's amazing how much energy is spent, is wasted really, on resisting what is, because it is. Why resist it, right? So in Taoism, it's funny, John, you talked about flowing like water today. It's like we are of one mind, because in Taoism, they describe the water course way, which means the path of least resistance. You know, we've had all this rain. I think you guys in Tahoe have had it too, but here in Shasta, we've had all this rain lately. And on my walks every day, I'm watching all these new little streams forming everywhere. And they're all finding their way down the hillside into the lake, right? The path of least resistance. They're just letting gravity bring that water down to the lake. So living in the water course way is about giving up the fight with what is happening and surrendering to the direction in which the universe is moving us, is guiding us. So when we have a position of power, say being a spiritual leader, or being a board member, or being a parent, being a manager, being a doctor, we get to learn about ourselves. And actually in all our relationships as well, we are always exploring power. We're exploring power all the time. I remember some years ago, I was counseling a woman and she was having some relationship challenges because her partner, he had this long time close friendship with a woman friend. And that friendship was platonic, but it felt threatening to this woman. And in counseling, and through her willingness to self-reflect, she was able to get in touch with the fact that what she was feeling was fear. She was feeling fear. And she saw that, she had this belief that if her partner, shared this loving friendship with this woman friend, it would mean less love for her. And so she was able to get in touch with that. And through her own personal work, she was able to see that she was trying to control her partner and insist that, he not have that friendship, even though that friendship, had been for years before she ever met him, right? So, through this work on herself, she was able to embrace her fear and begin to heal it. And in that, she was able to let go of trying to control him. She realized that, her controlling nature was actually creating distance when what she really wanted was to feel closer. So, it's just a good example of taking personal responsibility for self-healing. This center, this solar plexus, it's about personal responsibility, you know, and our healing so often involves self love, right? It involves loving the places in us that feel fear with tenderness, instead of judgment, just loving those places. And when we can do that, we can move from needing to control to surrendering to love, to trusting and empowering love. Okay. So, on that note, let's explore the fourth energy center, the spiritual heart. Okay. This transformative energy of moving from seeking power and control to desiring to live from love. This is the evolutionary thrust of our time. It really is. Every spiritual tradition focuses on living from the heart. There's been so much said about it. Loving our neighbor, loving God, loving spirit, loving nature, loving the planet, like loving spirit that lives in everything. When our heart center is open, it is such a high frequency. It is a high frequency in vibration. It is a coherent vibration. And coherence means we start to vibrate with everything. We start to feel this oneness, really. In the energy of love, oneness is natural. Think about it. When you're with somebody that you love and you're feeling a lot of love, you feel connected. You feel connected. It's natural. And this energy of love heals division. It is the greatest healing power that is known to humanity. Truly is. And what's really interesting is the Sanskrit word for the heart center is anahata. It's a Sanskrit word that means unhurt. I thought that's so interesting. Unhurt. I mean, it's another way of saying healed and whole, right? And the associated color with this heart center is the color green. That's why I wore green today. Sometimes pink, which I also really feel is a heart energy color. But the heart energy is interested in how we can love in widening circles. It's always wanting to widen the circle. It's inclusive, it's welcoming, it's accepting. And in life, there's an exploration of just how many ways love can express itself. It's infinite. It's infinite. Think about the moments in your life when love just touches your heart. Think about the moments when love just touches your heart. Sometimes I'm walking at the lake and someone just says hi to me with a big smile and tears come to my eyes, right? I'm touched by love, just simple expressions of love. Maybe it's, for you, maybe it's how happy your dog is. Animals are such amazing embodiments of love. Maybe, it's just the beauty of nature, one person's act of kindness. There's so many ways we can feel love, right? And our heart, begins to open when we remember a time in our life when we felt deeply loved. I know in my retreats, when I want to help people get in touch with the energy here, I just have them remember a time they felt so loved. And I have them share it. And as they share it, I watch, tears come, and it's the heart opening. I always say the diamonds are, that the tears are diamonds of the heart, right? So I'd like to share with you an experience for me that is just etched on my heart for all eternity, a personal story. When I was about 19, I lived in Gainesville, Florida. I was going to college. And late one evening, I got off work singing. I was singing at a resort, and I had been having a difficult time for a few weeks. At this point, I can't remember why, but I do remember that I was just so deeply sad. And I just was feeling like I could hardly go on. And at the time, the most loving person in my life was my great grandmother, Big Om. Big Om, when I was little, her name was Big Mom, but it turned into Big Om. Well, Big Om lived in a group home. She lived in assisted living. And it was a place I went to, about once a week to see her. But on this dark and late and lonely night, at 1 a.m, I just had to see Big Om. And so I found myself driving over there to the group home, and It was all dark, and I tiptoed up to the door, and amazingly, I turned the knob and the door opened. It was unlocked. And I snuck in and I slipped off my shoes and I tiptoed down the hallway to her room. And she shared her room with about 5 other women. So I tiptoed very quietly over to her bedside and I whispered, "Begone, begone, begone." And she woke up and she said, "Oh, Kathy, sweetheart, are you okay? What's going on?" And I just started sobbing as quietly as possible. I just started sobbing, and she pulled me close to hug me. And then I just got up in her little single bed with her, and she just held me. And I just cried and cried and cried until I was all cried out. And this incredible peace came over me. And I just felt so loved and I felt so safe. I fell asleep. And I woke up hours later. This is making my diamonds in my heart flow. I woke up hours later just as the sun was coming up, and fortunately, it was before anyone was up. So I got up and I snuck out without being seen. And Big Om and I never talked about it, and she probably thought it was a dream. But that experience stayed with me all these years later, all these years later. Now I remember it, and my heart just, it just opens to that presence of love that can be expressed in so many ways. All I have to do is think of that experience, I feel that love. So, to live in this heart center is to be open to receiving love and to find a million ways to express it. It's what gives life beauty and meaning. And it's so interesting how it is love that often allows us to release blockages in the heart, right? That's why it's so powerful. So, our spiritual journey involves paying attention to how our heart is doing. I think it's important to ask ourselves every day in different moments of the day, how's my heart doing, right? Is it feeling open? Is it feeling sad? Maybe it's feeling numb. Does it feel pinched or does it feel blocked? Some of the energies that create blockages in our hearts are the energy of fear, being afraid, feeling unsafe, the energy of anger, the energy of resentment and unforgiveness. And also, in particular, the energies of guilt, feeling guilty or feeling ashamed, they tend to really create blockage to loving ourselves, Heart blockage can sometimes express as depression or difficulty in relationships. And it can also express physically, as in heart disease. So before I close, I want to share a few practices that help us clear blockage in the heart and that help us amplify this heart energy. The first one is the loving kindness meditation, which I just shared with you. It's a beautiful meditation. You can find different variations on it. The Dalai Lama particularly loves this practice, and he says that 10 minutes, just 10 minutes of meditating on compassion and on kindness for others, and you will see its effects all day. He says this is the way to maintain a calm and joyous mind. Another important practice is self-care. I'm going to give a talk on self-care as well in the near future. But taking care of ourselves in every way, our mental health, our emotional health, our physical health, our spiritual well-being. Self-care is so important. We can't leave ourselves out of the equation of loving. That's why in that loving kindness meditation, we focus on ourselves first. And if it's hard to love yourselves, you can see yourself as an innocent child. That always helps us to open our hearts to ourselves. Third thing, one of the best ways to feel more love, of course, is through giving it in service. It is in giving we receive, as St. Francis said. For me, I feel like my day has to have at least one thing in it where I feel like I've made someone happy. I've touched their heart in some way. It could be as simple as a phone call, you know. It could be smiles at people I pass walking at the lake. Mother Teresa, I always had a plaque on my office wall that said from Mother Teresa, you cannot do great things, but you can do small things with great love, with great love. One of the most essential practices, of course, to releasing heart blockage is forgiveness. Forgiveness. And, you know, forgiveness, sometimes we need to forgive ourselves, and forgiveness doesn't have to necessarily include interaction with others, but it's really us releasing the blockage in our heart. It's most of all for us so that we can have an unimpeded flow of the energy of love. Okay. Last thing, Ram Dass always suggested the mantra, I am loving awareness. I am loving awareness. It's a beautiful mantra. You know, it helps us remember who we truly are as awareness that has the quality of love, like my talk a month ago, consciousness that is love, loving awareness. So we can repeat that, you know, throughout the day when negative thoughts want to come in, when self-judgments want to come in, or judgments of others want to come in. Become more mindful of, how does that feel in my body? How does it make me feel? Does it give me energy, or does it like close off the energy? And then repeat the mantra, I am loving awareness, and bring ourselves back to ourselves. It also can just inspire that journey, that 18-inch journey from the mind down to the heart, right? So in closing, I hope this, you know, talk today has really inspired some thoughtful reflection on, you know, how we're living with power. You know, how are we feeling as far as empowerment and personal responsibility? And also, how are we feeling in our heart? And what can we do to live with our heart more open, more stabilized in our heart center? So, in closing, I invite you to join me now in affirming, today and every day, I open my heart and I open my mind to the spiritual power of love. As I choose through my willpower to keep my mind focused on unconditional love as the greatest power in my life, I create and experience greater possibilities than I could ever have imagined. May each one of you and may all beings everywhere know their true nature as infinite love. And may all beings be happy. So be it, and so it is. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy.
You're welcome.
Beautiful talk.